January 2023, and the time is approximately 7 p.m. My name is Gary Ehrenrich, the designee at this hearing from the Montgomery County Department of Transportation. Here with me this evening to conduct the public hearing is Mr. Robert Gonzalez, manager of the Sidewalk Program within the Division of Transportation Engineering. Also in attendance is Mr. Rick Hawley, field supervisor, and Juan Berrios, construction representative. With us is also Ms. Lori Main, a planning specialist, all with the Sidewalk Program. Ms. Main is the person that is controlling the PowerPoint and admission to the program. Mr. Gonzalez will be providing the information and details regarding the proposed project. Thank you for joining us in this virtual forum. Although we have held quite a few virtual hearings, we are still learning, so please bear with us if we encounter any technical difficulties tonight. Please know that tonight's hearing is being recorded. A link to the recording will be posted on the Sidewalk Program website by 5 p.m. tomorrow. A link to the Sidewalk Program website will be provided on your screen and is at the top of the chat box on this virtual platform. You may also notice that your video camera is turned off by default this evening. To reduce the bandwidth of the meeting and to maximize technical efficiency, we request that you please do not turn on your video camera. Likewise, your microphones have been muted. Once the testimony portion of the hearing begins, those who have signed up to testify will be called on and asked to unmute when it is your turn to speak. Once invited to unmute, you can unmute yourself by clicking the microphone at the bottom left of your screen. If you have not signed up in advance to testify but wish to do so, please raise your hand by clicking on reactions icon at the bottom of your screen and then clicking raise hand. If you are joining us via telephone only, you may raise your hand by pressing *9, again, *9 on your telephone keypad and *6 to unmute yourself once invited to unmute. Please wait till the testimony portion of this hearing to raise your hand. You may raise your hand at any time during the testimony portion. I will say that we have a lot of speakers tonight, and I don't know how many additional speakers of those that have pre-registered to speak will be able to speak during the duration of the time frame we have for tonight. However, as I'll say later in my notes and my comments, that written testimony is also to be submitted, and it has equal weight as oral testimony. Following the testimony portion of this hearing, we will hold a question and answer session if time permits. You may also raise your hand to ask a question, or you are welcome to type your question in the chat box, the icon which is at the bottom of your screen. Tonight's hearing is being held pursuant to Section 49-53 of the Montgomery County Code. The purpose of a public hearing is to obtain testimony regarding the potential project to assist in determining if the project is in the best interest of the public and whether the project should be authorized for consideration in its entirety or any portion thereof. This forum allows you to provide testimony either in support for or in opposition to the project. Public comments should be focused entirely on the project itself, which is the topic of discussion tonight. All interested persons are entitled to be heard at this hearing. However, the testimony portion of the hearing is not a forum for dialogue, questions and answers, or cross-examination. Please direct your remarks to the specific project that is the subject of this hearing. If comments do stray into unrelated area, I will ask that you refocus your comments to the subject project. Following the conclusion of this public hearing, the record will remain open for 4 weeks to allow any person who is unable to attend the hearing an opportunity to have their testimony, their written testimony, and comments included into the public record and be fully considered. The official closing date by which all comments and testimony must be received is Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023 at 5 p.m. Submissions may be emailed or sent via regular mail and must be received or postmarked by the close of the hearing period. Please be sure to provide your name and property address on your submission. Written submissions will be considered with the same weight as oral testimony, as I previously said. Submissions should be sent to Ms. Main, whose contact information is posted at the top of this evening's chat, as well as on your screen. And there it is. After the hearing is concluded and the record is officially closed, I, as the hearing officer for tonight, will review and weigh all the information submitted into the public record and make a recommendation to the Director of the Department of Transportation, Mr. Chris Conklin. Mr. Conklin will make a final decision as to whether the project has been shown to be in the best public interest and whether to authorize the project as proposed or any portions presented tonight thereof. And now to discuss the actual sidewalk proposal before us for the Willerburn Acres community, I give you Mr. Robert Gonzalez.
Good evening, Messrs. Aaron Rich, Holly, and Barrios, Miss Main, ladies and gentlemen. The subject of this evening's public hearing is to consider a proposal to construct a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk with a 0 to 3 foot wide buffering green space along the following roadways in the Willerburn Acres community. The north or odd numbered side of Fontaine Street from Goya Drive to 7 Lux Road. The southwest or even numbered side of Goya Drive from 7 Lux Road to Fontaine Street. The east odd numbered side of Greenleaf Avenue from Fontaine Street to Reynolds Avenue. The south or odd numbered side of Gainsborough Road from 7 Lux Road to Fontaine Street. The south or even numbered side of Mary Cassett Drive from 7 Lux Road to Ivy Mount Terrace. The south even numbered side of Ivy Mount Terrace from 7 Lux Road to the cul-de-sac. For your convenience, we have posted a few displays that aid in the visual description of this project. The displays will also be posted on the Sidewalk Program website by 5 p.m. tomorrow, January 26, 2023. They are displays A1 and A2. Display A1 is an aerial project vicinity map of the proposed sidewalk in the Willerburn Acres community. The map shows the location of proposed sidewalks relative to the schools and places of worship and other pedestrian generators such as the Maddox School, Ivy Mount School, Chabad of Potomac, Young Israel of Potomac, Potomac Child Care, St. James Episcopal Church, Beth Shalom Congregation, Upper Room House of Prayer, 7 Lux Baptist School, the Geneva Day School, Potomac Child Care, the Cabot-John Trailhead located off the Goya Drive, the existing network of sidewalks, as well as public amenities. Display 2 is an aerial project vicinity map of the proposed sidewalks in the Willerburn Acres community relative to local attractions along 7 Lux Road, north, south, and west of the community. The map shows the Park Potomac complex north of the Willerburn Acres community with its numerous restaurants, shops, and amenities, including Atman's Delicatessen, Founding Farmers, Harris Teeter Grocery Store, Gringos and Mariachis, King Street Oyster Bar, Orange Theory Fitness, Kaufman Jewelers, Orchid Nails and Spa, Love Couture Bridal, Park Potomac Yoga, public transportation facilities, and the existing network of sidewalks. Although not shown on this map, the Park Potomac complex is immediately adjacent to the shops and restaurants on Fortune Terrace, including One Life Fitness, the Bottle Shop Wine and Beer, Domino's Pizza, MedStar Health Urgent Care at Potomac, Grand Fusion, Quincy's Potomac Bar and Grill, on Cloud9 Children's Clothing Store, Inspire Nail Bar, Walgreens, and O'Donnell's Market. Also shown on this map are the amenities west of the Willerburn Acres community, including the Potomac Woods Park, Maryland State Police, Breakthrough Test Prep, and the Regency Estate Swim Club. Likewise, the Cabot-John Village Shopping Center and Mall are displayed just south of the Willerburn Acres community with their shops, restaurants, medical facilities, and amenities including M&T Bank, Plower Pediatric Dentistry, Occasions Gift Shop, McDonald's, Hall of Fame Cards and Collectibles, My Gym, Shin Orthodontics, Shoe Train, East West Taekwondo, Hall of Fame Cards and Collectibles, Say Yes for Less Bridal Shop, The Pretzel Bakery, Congressional Bank, CVS, Capital One Bank, S&P Bank, Stretch Zone, Giant Food, Oak Barrel and Vine, Montgomery County Liquor Store, Seven Locks Animal Hospital, Starbucks, Advanced Acupuncture Nutrition Coaching Center, Blue Mercury Cosmetics, Gregorio's Trattoria, Lafayette Federal Credit Union, Dunkin' Donuts, Georgetown Ballet Dry Cleaners, Plata Bowl, California Tortilla, the Glossary Nail Spa at Cabin John, the Shade Store, Carpet and Vacuum Expo and PNC Bank and ATM, public transportation facilities, and the existing network of sidewalks. The proposed sidewalks are shown in red and the existing sidewalks in blue. The total length of this new sidewalk construction is supposed to be approximately 12,000 total linear feet. Display B is showing a typical section of the proposed sidewalk on Fontaine Street, which has a 50-foot public right-of-way and the roadway being 21 feet wide. Thus, there's a 14.5 feet of public right-of-way available on each side on Fontaine Street. We plan for a 5-foot wide sidewalk with a 0 to 3 foot wide green space between the curb and the sidewalk. Display C, a typical section of the proposed sidewalk on Goya Drive, which has a 70-foot public right-of-way, the roadway being 36 feet wide. Thus, there's a 17-foot public right-of-way available on each side of Goya Drive. We plan for a 5-foot wide sidewalk with a 0 to 3 foot wide green space between curb and sidewalk. Display D, a typical section of the proposed sidewalk on Greenleaf Avenue, which has a 60-foot public right-of-way and the roadway being 26 feet wide. Thus, there's a 17 feet public right-of-way available on each side of Greenleaf Avenue. We plan for a 5-foot wide sidewalk with a 0 to 3 foot wide green space between the curb and sidewalk. Display E is a typical section of the proposed sidewalk on Gainsborough Road, which has a 60-foot wide public right-of-way and the roadway being 18 to 26 feet wide. Thus, there's a 21 to 17-foot wide public right-of-way available on each side of Gainsborough Road. We plan for a 5-foot wide sidewalk with a 0 to 3 foot wide green space between the road and the sidewalk. Display F. Display F is a typical section of proposed sidewalk on Mary Cassett Drive, which has a 60-foot wide public right-of-way and the roadway being 20 foot. Thus, there's a 20-foot wide public right-of-way available on each side of Mary Cassett Drive. We plan for a 5-foot sidewalk with a 0 to 3 foot wide green space between the road and the sidewalk. Display G, a typical section of proposed sidewalk on Ivy Mount Terrace, which has a 60-foot public right-of-way, the roadway being 23 feet wide. Thus, there's an 18.5 foot of public right-of-way available on each side of Ivy Mount Terrace. We plan for a 5-foot wide sidewalk with a 0 to 3 foot wide green space between the road and the sidewalk. Public justification. Montgomery County DOT evaluates requests for pedestrian facilities based on their ability to serve a public use and enhance public safety. The main goal for installing a sidewalk is to remove pedestrians from the path of vehicular traffic and create a separation between the pedestrian and the roadway. Sidewalk installation, likewise, is a key component of the county's climate action plan, setting up the infrastructure to allow pedestrians to safely walk, separated from traffic, to short distance destinations, as well as public transportation for longer trips. The new sidewalks in the Willerburn Acres community will connect to the network of sidewalks on and stemming from 7 Locks Road, removing the pedestrians and and disabled persons from the roadway in oncoming vehicular traffic. The sidewalks will establish safer access to numerous aforementioned pedestrian generators as displayed in displays A1 and A2, as well as all areas of the community. Pedestrian safety will be improved for the entire community. Tree removal and replacement. This project involves a removal of 67 trees to facilitate the construction of the sidewalks. An additional 15 trees have been slated for removal due to poor condition or extensive trunk decay. For each tree removal, 3 trees will be replanted. Therefore, 201 trees will be replanted back into the public right-of-way on the proposed roadways. Placement and the species of these new trees will be selected by the county's arborists. If the proposed sidewalks are ultimately approved, residents will be given instruction for requesting their preferred replacement tree species. The tree protection report can be downloaded from the Montgomery County DOT project website. Copies of the Willerburn Acres Community Tree Protection Report were mailed to residents with a sidewalk proposal on or about November 18, 2022. Costs and assessments. The estimated cost for installing Willerburn Acres Community Sidewalk is approximately $1.4 million. Estimated costs include construction and inspection and administrative costs. Funding for this project will be provided under the county sidewalk program CIP, project number 0506747. There are no properties considered to be specially benefited by the proposed improvement. Therefore, no properties are expected to be assessed. Exhibits. As previously discussed, several exhibits are incorporated in the public record binder for your information and consideration. The exhibits include 1, Office of Management and Budget, Sidewalk Program Minor Projects, P506747. 2 is the project vicinity maps. 3 is the public right-of-way construction impacts. 4 is the arborist tree evaluation report. 5 is the Montgomery County press release circulated January 25, 2023. Washington Times legal advertisement published on January 23 and 24, 2023, and published on the Nextdoor neighborhood social media site on January 23, 2023. Number 6 is the written testimony supporting all or portion of the proposed sidewalks to date. Number 7 is written testimony opposing sidewalk installation to date. List of the attendees to be added following this hearing. Number 9, hearing transcript also to be added following the hearing. Project-related data and files can be downloaded from the Sidewalk Program's website. The files will continue to be available to the public until the record for this public hearing is officially closed on February 22, 2023. If the proposed sidewalk is approved, Montgomery County DOT will utilize a work order contract currently in place with the Division of Transportation Engineering to construct the sidewalks. If approved and authorized for construction, we anticipate construction during the summer or fall of 2023. The construction of all proposed sidewalks is anticipated to take approximately 10 to 12 weeks, weather permitting, if authorized as presented. As previously stated, here with us this evening is Mr. Rick Holly, Field Supervisor, and Mr. Juan Barrios, Construction Representative of the Sidewalk Program. They will be available after the testimony portion of this hearing to answer any questions regarding the construction aspects of this project. And now I turn the meeting back over to Mr. Ehrenrich.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. We will now hear testimony from those in attendance who wish to testify. If you have not signed up to testify, but decide that you would like to, please click on the reactions icon at the bottom menu bar and then click raise hand to raise your hand. Alternatively, if you joined the meeting by phone, you may dial *9 from your telephone keypad to raise your hand. Once you are invited to speak and unmute yourself, please unmute yourself by clicking the microphone icon at the bottom left of your screen. Please clearly provide your name and address for the record prior to beginning your testimony. In addition, you may submit your full testimony in writing. These submissions, as I said previously, and Mr. Gonzalez also repeated, will be fully considered along with the oral testimony heard here today. Please reserve all questions for the question and answer session following the testimony portion of the hearing. The public hearing was advertised to take place tonight from 7 to 9 p.m. We will hopefully be able to get all of our testimony in by that time, but we are willing to stay a little longer to get additional testimony if it runs past 9 p.m. Again, written testimony has the same weight as oral testimony. We will begin with those who have signed up in advance to testify at this evening's hearing. Again, please be sure to announce your name and property address before providing testimony. Miss Main, can you start?
Yes, absolutely. First, we will hear from Ben Aiken. Ben, can you unmute yourself, please?
Hi, sorry, I'm watching my kids right now. Can I hop on later in line?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, let's hear from Ricky Citron. Just find you in this very long list. Actually, I do not see her. All right. How about Anthony Haramis? Anthony, let's see if I can find you. All right, we are not, let's see. How about Eric Skolnick? No. Rochelle Sobel. Oh, okay. Actually, Ricky Citron. Let me just something here. There we are.
Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay, I think the issue was people could not
Okay.
unmute. Yes.
Yes. No,
Okay.
I apologize for that.
My name is Rochelle Sobel, 11769 Gainsborough Road. And I'm speaking as president of ASSERT, the Association for Safe International Road Travel, an organization that I founded in response to the death of my son, who was killed in a road crash in a very different kind, and as a resident who regularly walks and drives on the streets that we are discussing. Several years ago, ASSERT was approached by members of our community expressing concerns about our local roads. In response, ASSERT sent out a questionnaire asking community members to describe the locations of their concerns and offer possible solutions. We received a large number of responses. Respondents described dangerous crossings, inadequate street lighting, speeding vehicles, and a lack of sidewalks. A number of respondents noted that they walked to places of worship, to friends' homes on the Sabbath and Jewish holidays, and felt unsafe walking. ASSERT collated all responses and sent them to appropriate divisions of MCDOT, who added this information to their ongoing database of requests for road safety improvements. ASSERT strongly believes in the separation of pedestrians from vehicles, among other measures, by the installation of sidewalks. On average, 400 pedestrians are struck by vehicles in Montgomery County each year. Everyone benefits from the separation of pedestrians from motorized traffic. Parents and caregivers with babies in strollers, children, older adults, and people with disabilities. The presence of sidewalks makes driving less stressful for motorists as well. According to the Federal Highway Administration, the likelihood of a site with a paved sidewalk being a road crash site is up to 88.2% lower than a site without a sidewalk. Data also indicates that sidewalks increase property values, and 8 in 10 Americans prefer living in a community with sidewalks. I know that many of us are concerned about trees. I am so glad that you made it very clear about the replacement of trees. And I also understand that sidewalks can be curved to adapt to the, so that removal of trees will not be necessary and other accommodations can also be made. From a personal perspective, my house is situated on the curve of Gainsborough Road. Gainsborough carries a lot of traffic for a so-called side street and is a popular walking club route. Cars whip by, and frankly, it makes me nervous to walk in the street. My concern increases at night, both as a pedestrian and as a driver, who cannot always readily see people who often wear dark clothing as they walk on this very dark street. The other streets in our neighborhood are also filled with traffic. School buses, carpools, nursery school classes out for a walk, strollers and walkers out for exercise on their way
I'm
to.
sorry, Rochelle, can you wrap it
I'm
up?
finish
please?
up in 1 second. On
Okay,
the way
thank
to
you.
preschools and schools, synagogues and churches. Our neighborhood, thank goodness, is a thriving multi-generational community of precious children and growing senior population. I hope that we take advantage of this opportunity to install sidewalks in our neighborhood and make ours a truly safer community for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Ricky Citron.
I'm sorry, this is the court reporter. Would you mind spelling your name for the record, Miss Sobel?
Yes, sorry, I unmuted. S-O-B-E-L.
Thank you so much.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ricky Citron, and I live at 7709 Mary Cassatt Drive. I would prefer that we not have the sidewalks, at least on Mary Cassatt and Ivy Mount. And I feel that I don't know yet if this is a one or all situation or individual streets are up to deciding them by themselves. First of all, there are no traffic issues because we are literally in a cul-de-sac. Secondly, the rain runoff is already a problem here. There's a ditch running down the sides of the street. When it rains heavily, the street at the bottom is completely flooded, and sidewalks would only exacerbate this problem. I'm a little further distressed by the issue of not only mature trees for shade, but also of the runoff. As you know, Montgomery County has the rainscape plan to stop rain from running into our sewers and carrying toxic chemicals into our waterways. The focus of Montgomery County, which is right now addressing $7,500 credits for people to set up rainscape activity at their houses, on their properties. This is in direct contradiction to that. So I'm a little concerned about the drainage issue as well. Now, my daughter grew up here and she had no problems biking or walking to high school, to Churchill, to our local church or temple. You know, for those who go to one or the other on our block, there are safety crossings at 7 Locks Road. So I really would appreciate if we be either an all or none decision, but rather let each street decide for themselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from David Fuller. David, can you unmute yourself? Okay. How about Stepgen Bashian?
Hi, this is Stephen Bashian.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
I live at 7812 Mary Cassatt Drive. We have lived in this neighborhood for approximately 40 years and on Mary Cassatt Drive for 27 of those years. I'm just going to give you a few bits because I notice you've received written testimony from Dana Ginsburg, for instance, which lists all the pros. By the way, I am against sidewalks, not just against sidewalks, I'm strongly against sidewalks for reasons I will soon say. But Ms. Ginsburg lists most of the reasons why sidewalks just doesn't make sense for Mary Cassatt nor Ivy Mount. Ricky Citron added to that information. As far as we know, we've been here a long time, and Mary Cassatt is about 50 years old. I'm told that according to Montgomery County, there's never been an auto accident on Mary Cassatt or Ivy Mount in 50 years. So to start off, you're looking to make things safer. Hey, it's not broke. Let's not waste taxpayer money on fixing something that's not broke. As far as this particular neighborhood, it is kind of unique. Beth Shalom congregation, which you mentioned before, has been in this neighborhood for a little over 50 years. Two other synagogues, the Chabad Synagogue and the Young Israel, have been in this neighborhood for about 25 years. Why do I bring that up? Because 65 days a year, that is each of the Sabbaths, and Friday night, you'll get more than about 180 days a year, plus the Jewish holidays. People who live in Willerburn Acres and attend those synagogues, for the most part, walk. And so that's a lot of days of the year in which you have a high volume of walkers. As far as we know, there's no record of accidents, of auto accidents. People may feel unsafe, but the facts are no auto accidents. And finally, on a very personal level, if the sidewalks were imposed, we would, at our home, suddenly have about 300 square feet of concrete sidewalk to take care of. A, because the law is going to require us to take care of it, and B, because we will be vulnerable to people slipping on ice or on snow in front of our house and be subject to.
Sir, can you please wrap it up? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm almost finished.
Okay, thank you.
So you put 300 square feet of concrete in front of my house. You're going to make me responsible for removing snow and ice, both by law and also to avoid being sued by somebody who might slip and fall. And you're going to make me responsible for any breakage to fix it on my expense.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So
Okay, next we will hear from Gloria Lee. Gloria, can you unmute yourself? Okay, how about Andrew Menner or Jessica Menner?
Hi, this is Andrew Maynor, M-E-N-E-R. We're at 11740 Gainsborough Road. I just want to thank Montgomery County for this initiative. I think it's really fabulous. Nothing is more important than the health and safety of our community. And I want to commend the county on working to achieve what the CDC is calling an activity-friendly community. And what the Surgeon General's guidance design calls our efforts to design streets, sidewalks, and crosswalks that encourage walking for people of all ages and abilities. This has become a priority across the country, and I think it's really fabulous that Montgomery County is promoting this initiative. if this initiative is going to be appropriate for any area in the county, it's appropriate for this community. Due to the density of observant Jews, the density of synagogues, the need for people in our community to walk to those synagogues, this has an unusually high density of pedestrian traffic. So either this is a worthwhile initiative in the county, or it has to be appropriate for our community. I wanted to really emphasize the need that we all have to make sacrifices sometimes in order to improve safety and improve the walkability of the community. And while I really do appreciate that some trees will have to go and that the landscape may look a little different, I just want to thank the county for pushing this initiative and encouraging all of us to work to make the overall community safer. It's important to reduce carbon emission, encourage exercise, fight childhood obesity, make the neighborhood friendlier for families and seniors. It's just an all-around excellent idea that promotes safety. And while I do recognize that, thank God, there have not been at least any recent accidents that we're aware of, we modify our routine in order to avoid those. We jump off to the side of the road to avoid cars that race by. When I was walking yesterday with my elderly father, we had to several times come off the road with him and his walker onto the grass to avoid cars that were racing by. So yes, we have been very lucky, thank God, that there has not been an accident or, God forbid, a fatality, but that's not due to a lack of risk. That's due to pedestrians really taking it upon themselves to protect themselves, avoid going to synagogue oftentimes at night because of fear that we might get into an accident. And I'm hoping that sidewalks allow us to have the freedom to choose to walk to friends in the evening, during the daytime, maybe even walk to Cabin John rather than drive, because it would be safer and more feasible to do so. So thank you, Montgomery County. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Jonathan Engler. Jonathan, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you. My name is Jonathan Engler. We live at 11901 Gainsborough Road. And I'd just like to echo my complete agreement with everything the last speaker said. We live on the corner of Whistler and Gainsborough. And I can't speak for other streets in the neighborhood. I understand many of our neighbors, members of our community who live on streets other than Gainsborough have concerns about their streets, and I can't speak to those. But when it comes to Gainsborough Road, this stretch there's a lot of traffic here. I think partly because it continues from the other side of Seven Locks Road. There's more than one would expect of delivery vehicles, and there is a lot of traffic. And I noticed this particularly, I drive home most days from downtown, and particularly in the winter, it's rare that even when I'm crawling along Gainsborough Road at well below the speed limit, the rare day basically jump in front of you where someone's walking their dog in the dark, wearing their headphones on the side of the road, and they need just the trains are.
Sir, you're losing connection. I'm sorry. We can't hear what you're saying. The connection.
I apologize. Let me try this. Is that better?
That's better.
Okay.
Oh, we still can't hear you, actually. Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Engler. If you want to try to call back or.
Please, you please submit the written testimony, and we will review it as with oral testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Peter Alterman.
Hello, this is Peter Alderman from 11936 Sequoia Drive. Given the number of people in this meeting, I will cede my time and send in written comments.
Thank you, sir. Okay, next we'll hear from Deborah Gagneton.
Okay, here I am. I am Deborah Gagneton. I live on 7620 Americasat Drive. I oppose the building of the sidewalks. I'm talking mostly for Americasat Drive and Ivy Mount. These are two streets that are really virtually cul-de-sac streets that have been the same for the last 40 years and will be the same for the next many decades because there's no new development, no new stores, nothing new. So it's a very established neighborhood that it's very rural looking, very peaceful, very quiet, and with very, very little traffic. So in a way, it's very hard to believe and very painful to see that the county's priority is to build sidewalks on these two streets, which have very little traffic. The sidewalks are really simply not necessary. And it's really sad. It is really quite embarrassing also that the county's priority is, and with its limited resources, that there's so many needs in the county, is putting its resources to build these sidewalks that are not necessary really. So as one of the speakers said, you're trying to fix something that it's not broken. We've lived in this neighborhood for over 20 years. And it's an established neighborhood with no changes on two streets that are really cul-de-sac streets that have really very little traffic. So, it's really quite something to see that the county is using all these resources to build sidewalks that are not necessary. So obviously, as you can see, we are against the construction of sidewalks.
Ma'am, I'm
Thank
sorry, this
you.
is the reporter. For the record, could you please repeat your name and address?
Yes, Deborah Gagneton, 7620 Mary Cassatt Drive.
Could you spell your last name for me?
Sure, G-A-G-N-E, T as in Tom, E-N, Gagneton.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Okay, next we'll hear from Steve Klein.
Thank you very much. My wife and I are also against this sidewalk proposal because it is unnecessary, it is harmful to the environment, and it is wasteful. It is a great goal to try to get people out of their cars and walk. The people aren't walking, and this won't change if you put in sidewalks. The two things are not related. I walk, I am a walker. The streets do not bother me in the least. The entire neighborhood is a cul-de-sac neighborhood. The only people that drive here are us. It's us. We are the people who live here, we walk here, we drive here. Putting in sidewalks won't change anything. I walk to the store. I carry a backpack with me. My kids grew up here. We've lived here for over 30 years. Now I walk my dog, I walk my grandkids. I feel perfectly safe. I asked my kids, they were perfectly comfortable living here, growing up and walking to school. So it's unnecessary. It will not change anything. It is a cul-de-sac neighborhood. And according to your own instructions, if people in a cul-de-sac are opposed to a sidewalk, you won't put it in. It's also harmful to the environment. It's not just the trees. And I completely agree with the concern about the trees. It's 60,000 square feet of earth being replaced by concrete. It's ugly, it's runoff, and it's harmful to the environment. And as has already been said, it is a waste of money. We don't need this addition to our neighborhood. Spend the money on people who actually need it. That's not us. So I think this is totally misguided, unnecessary, and harmful. I submitted a written, more detailed written testimony. I hope people have an opportunity to read it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we will hear from Helen Sabzavari.
Good evening, everyone. This is Helen Sabzavari, and I reside at 7700 Mary Cassatt Drive as well. And similar to my fellow residents in this area, I oppose having the sidewalks. Even though I fully understand the need for some of the neighborhoods, and I sympathize with some of the traffic that might be occurring in other streets, and they might need that. I agree with my other neighbors that here, this is a closed cul-de-sac. Only people here that they drive, that they live here. Actually, I moved to this neighborhood exactly for the ecosystem that this neighborhood has, from the perspective of the nature, all the way to being a closed cul-de-sac with the number of neighbors that I know, and they have lived here for many, many years. As a result of that, I really, first of all, don't see any necessity, perhaps other neighborhood that they needed. I absolutely encourage the county to spend the money on those neighborhoods. Secondly, there are other things that perhaps can use, such as paving our roads here, that has not been done, at least since I have moved to this neighborhood. I am concerned about the ecosystem, even though it sounds wonderful that there would be 3 trees per each, but when you have, in front of my own house, I have 18 large ferns that they will be removed or damaged. It's not just that you can immediately repair this by putting 3 trees instead. There would be no room, first of all. Secondly, it will take years to get to the same kind of environment that has been already established for decades within this neighborhood. And you are changing the whole ecosystem for the animals in this neighborhood as well. It's not just about the trees, it's all of the other species that they exist within this. And finally, as all my fellow neighbors have mentioned, again, we are not having the traffic that other streets have. And as I run a public company, it is well understood. You need to focus your resources within the areas of need. And otherwise, just treating every neighborhood or every part of the county with the same concept without really considering, is this a necessity or it's just nice to do
Can
this?
you please wrap it up, please? Thank you.
I am done, and I oppose having the sidewalks at 70 in Mary Cassatt and Ivy Mont. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll hear from Philip Berry.
Good evening. My name is Philip Berry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. My address is 7714 Mary Cassatt Drive. I'm testifying tonight in strong opposition to the sidewalk proposal and ask respectfully that Mary Cassatt Drive be excluded from the Willerburn Acres Sidewalk Initiative for the following reasons. We are not a through street. We do not connect the full makeup into the rest of Willerburn Acres. There have been 0 reported pedestrian accidents or fatalities on Mary Cassatt Drive. And if you can use the statistics that was given by ASSERT, you can use the statistics on our street, which is 0. Since the inception of Mary Cassatt, which is about 50 years now, the generators for pedestrians on our street are not new and have not changed. With the low number of people and houses in Mary Cassatt, we've remained the same for over 50 years and does not and will not impact the number of walkers and pedestrians on our street. There is no new housing being developed, and we have a limited number of residents that use our small cul-de-sac street together with Ivy Mount. The published climate action plan is surely better served by not destroying trees and pouring concrete unnecessarily. The sidewalks will not increase micromobility, pedestrians, or the use of public transport by residents on our street, Mary Cassatt. Furthermore, the high injury network, which is around 450 miles, does not apply to Mary Cassatt, and the justification that we are on an equity emphasis area is exactly the wrong reason to have sidewalks on our street for obvious reasons, since we're not an EEA. We do not legally fall into the designated category of a Maryland priority funding area, So why are we slotted for sidewalks? It's a waste of resources and taxpayers' money. I believe based on the reasons I have outlined, our street overwhelmingly fails to meet the requirements for this unnecessary initiative. And therefore, in opposing this, I join the over 90% of Mary Cassatt residents as per our submitted petition, which you should have in your records, opposing sidewalks and request that Mary Cassatt Drive and Ivy Mount be removed from it and separated from the Willerburn Acres Sidewalk Initiative. Thank you for your time this evening.
Lori, if you're talking, we cannot hear you.
I'm so sorry. Next, we will hear from Jill Tender.
Hi, I'm at 7716 Ivy Mount Terrace, and I am absolutely against the sidewalks. A lot of the reasons have already been given, so I'm just going to quickly go over a few that I don't think have been said very much. One, once again, it's a waste of money. It would make much more sense, I believe, to repave our roads and add additional lighting, which from what I understand, people have been requesting for a long time. I live on Ivy Mount Terrace. As I said, I would like to divide out Ivy Mount Terrace and Mary Cassatt from the rest of the area, from the rest of Willerburn Acres, and make that in a separate entity, because we are like divided, you know, we're a loop. So it doesn't make sense for us to be connected with that. At the beginning of the interviews, Ms. Sobel stated that we were sent out surveys from ACER. I can say with certainty that I never received a survey, and if I had, I would have put my, I would have made it clear I was against the sidewalks. The other thing I'm afraid of is that it's somewhat already decided, and we're fighting an uphill battle for no reason when they were not truly requested by the neighborhood in the first place. I think it was kind of a sly way that they were put into, you know, Montgomery County's request, you know, like as a request. I don't think that the neighborhood was really aware of what was going on. Just as a side note, the pictures at the beginning of the slideshow were inaccurate. They did not show our specific streets. Not that I mean, it was not an actual picture of our street. And lastly, I have two kids that are in middle school and high school, and they walk and ride bikes without difficulty. And I'm not worried about that. And besides the fact that when they ride bikes, they're not even supposed to ride on the sidewalk. So that would be sort of not very, that wouldn't solve any problems in my family's life. So I'm against it for many reasons in addition to what other people have said. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Next, we will hear from Brittany McKinney.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, this is actually Derek McKinney. Brittany is my granddaughter. She lives here with.
Okay, great.
And so, but I like to speak for the family. We've lived here on Fontaine Street. We're at 7605 Fontaine Street. We've lived here for over 25 years. And our sons have grown up here, went to Churchill, and we've been around here for quite a long time. And I actually spend, I think a lot of people around here know me because I actually spend a lot of time walking around the neighborhood. Me and my dog have been out here walking for the last 13 years up and down these streets. We do it in the day and at night, etc. And so it's our experience. It's a very safe neighborhood. We have wonderful neighbors, wonderful people. There's rarely any traffic in the neighborhood. Goya and Fontaine kind of make a loop up to the main road, but in fact, the neighborhood is a closed neighborhood. There's not like through traffic. Almost everybody driving through here is local. There are problems with lack of street lights. It'd be nice if there were more street lights, for example. But the other issue is for us is that we are seniors now, and we're really very much concerned about the responsibility and the liabilities associated with sidewalks, particularly in front of our house. You know, I'm one of the few people around here, I think, who actually still shovels his own sidewalk or his own driveway, okay? And I'm getting to a point where I really can't do it. And so I'm very concerned about, as I get to be an elder senior, the ability to be able to take care of that responsibility. And then which leaves the issue of the liability if somebody gets hurt or falls or slips on ice or whatever. The kid even falls just riding his bike on a sidewalk. So that is my biggest concern about it. And I do agree with all the comments that it's just completely unnecessary and probably not a good use of taxpayer money. So that's my opinion. And I like that. Couple of things. One, if they're concerned about traffic, there should be some alternatives to slow traffic. Maybe there's a roundabout or maybe a better sign or something like that that could do that. And I do agree there's some parts of the neighborhood are a little more dangerous than others. Like at the top of Fontaine, there is a hill and a turn. It makes kind of a curve that makes it hard to see. And maybe in those areas there are some special places, some walkways should be put to get people out of the path because the cars can't necessarily see them. So I am very strongly in this regard against the sidewalks. And if I would say, if in fact there are going to be sidewalks here, I would think it would only be fair because they're not going to be on everybody's property, that there be an HOA, homeowners association set up of all people in all neighborhoods, and it'd be mandatory that everybody contribute to take care of these sidewalks. And not leave it on just the homeowners who happen to be, you know, the sidewalks are actually on their property. Okay, if everybody's going to use them, and so that commitment should be from the whole community. Yeah, and so anyway, that's my wife has a couple of things she wants to say. Yeah, no, I don't. So anyway, that's my time. I hope everybody heard me okay, and that's my opinion.
Thank you, sir. Okay, next we will hear from Orly Panich.
Hi, thank you very much. Yeah, my name is Orly Panich. That's Panitch. And I live at 11753 Gainsborough Road. So in context, I have been an emergency physician in this county for over 30 years. I have seen a lot of motor vehicle accidents. I see the devastation. I am a firm believer in safety. And so with that, I'd like to start by saying I firmly support everything that Rochelle Sobel says. I think our neighborhood needs to be as safe as it could possibly be. And the metric of having no accidents is not even high enough. There should never be the thought of having that. Now, with that said, I have some very significant concerns. One was laid out by Ricky Citron very well. I have a huge problem with flooding already. And if there's the introduction of impermeable surfaces coupled with the loss of my trees, I really suspect that I will have a much larger problem. And I would like to have that addressed by the county, how that would be remediated before this project were to happen. I believe I agree with the last speaker, and as well as what Steve Bashine had discussed about liability. I think those are significant issues that need to be thought out. And also with leadership of the county, how the maintenance of these sidewalks will happen. And on that point, I'm going to just be very blunt. I give the county a huge vote of no confidence. I think we live in one of the most affluent zip codes in one of the most affluent counties in the history of the universe. And I have a sidewalk, I have a street that has not been paved in the 16 and a half years that I've lived here. It frankly is a disgrace. It has been brought to the attention of the county multiple times, and there's still no plan to pave it. until 2024 at the earliest. And that's just completely unacceptable. The response to having streetlights has been abysmal, and again, a disgrace to the county. So I can't honestly endorse the county doing any sort of further projects without first being able to demonstrate that they're able to remediate the problems that they have. It's very difficult to believe that another project would actually help the safety of this community. And finally, our trees are beautiful. They're majestic. Replacing a 50 or 60-year-old tree with a little sapling or 3 little saplings is an imaginary and ridiculous equation and shouldn't be really spoke of. And finally, the last comment, the last comment I wanted to make is—
Ma'am, that is time. Can you please finish up?
Yes, I have one comment left, which is I'd like to see a little bit of data to suggest why the county believes that sidewalks would actually improve the atmosphere and the climate here. I think that that's probably a lot of hyperbole. People who walk will walk regardless. I don't think sidewalks will create that. But I do believe in safety. This project is important. And if you can demonstrate you can do it, I think it should happen.
Thank you. Okay, next we will hear from Tina and Aggie Hansis. Okay, how about Nira Berry?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Nira Berry. It's Berry. I live on 7714 Mary Cassette Drive. I'm testifying today in opposition to the proposed sidewalks, specifically on Mary Cassette Drive and Ivy Mount Terrace. I would like to request that Mary Cassette Drive and Ivy Mount Terrace be removed from the total Willerburn Acres sidewalk proposal. Since these two streets are not connected to Wilburn Acres by any street, it is easy to remove them from the proposal. The overwhelming majority of our residents on these two streets do not want the sidewalks. Our petition opposing sidewalks specifically for Mary Cassette and Ivy Mount has been submitted. Our streets are not through streets and they have very little street traffic. They are actually two streets that connect to make a closed cul-de-sac. There are only pedestrians and cars that belong to the houses and their visitors on the street. These streets are extremely low usage. Very few people walk up the street. A few people have said that adding sidewalks will add to the number of pedestrians, which I don't believe to be factual. There is nothing stopping people from walking now. Looking at my Ring front door camera, the footage for over a period of over 6 hours, I only saw 4 cars total go by. The same number of houses and people have lived on our streets and have always had low usage, even with the synagogues, churches, schools, and shopping centers that already existed for decades. The number of pedestrians and cars will not change. The walking patterns are not going to increase to justify sidewalks. We have had no reported accidents on our streets ever. I also wanted to address that it's better for the environment to safeguard our mature trees that nest birds and animals and provide shade and not to uproot them and to replace with saplings. Your proposal will also change the rural feel of our neighborhood that all of us who bought here value so much. Not to mention that this goes directly against the Montgomery County Rainscape program. If you ever get a chance to actually walk down our two streets of Mary Cassette Drive and Ivy Mount Terrace that make a cul-de-sac, you'll see how they are not good sidewalk candidates, and it's simply ridiculous to justify that they are, when there are other higher priority streets and other higher priority projects that justify sidewalks, streetlights, etc. I, along with almost all of our residents, am asking you to please delete Mary Cassette Drive, and Ivy Mount Terrace from your overall Willerburn Acres sidewalk proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Michael Hurwitz.
Hi there. My name is Michael Hurwitz, Hurwitz. My wife and I and family live at 11821 Gainsborough Road. We also owned property on Greenleaf 5 or 6 years ago. So we lived in the neighborhood for over 10 years, raising 3 kids here, and we are opposed to the sidewalk plan. I don't want to just reiterate what a bunch of all the valid points that others have made, but I mean, when we purchased the properties in this neighborhood, we did very much value the majestic trees on both sides of the street. And it would look odd, to say the least, to have these majestic trees be on one side of Greenleaf, Fontaine, and Gainsborough and other streets, and a bunch of little saplings on the other, putting aside the sort of ecological harm and other points that others have made. I do want to focus, because I live on the lowest point of Gainsborough Road, the comments that were made by others about the significant flooding concerns that would take place. I mean, already there's a very large amount of water that tends to pool at the water drains at the bottom of both sides of the road. I feel like sidewalks are going to significantly increase that problem if you would add all that impervious surface. The gentleman who spoke earlier, who mentioned 60,000 square feet of impervious surface added through this project, really put it in stark view. That's more than a football field size of square footage of concrete added to Willerburn Acres, which will severely affect the amount of impervious surface and the water flow as a result. We actually built our house at Gainsborough Road, and for every square footage of our roof that was built, we had to install dry wells as per the county's rainscape and water runoff plan. And just adding that amount of impervious surface in the form of a concrete sidewalk to my front yard will severely increase the amount of just water runoff straight into the forest behind my house. In general, I just feel like this, I want to echo the comments of others who say this is very unnecessary. Again, we've raised 3 growing children, teenagers now, and they learn to adapt, as others have said. And on Fridays and Saturdays, when a lot of people are walking, the cars actually, the people in the neighborhood know that a lot of people are walking, and they tend to adapt. And we've all adapted to it. And I think sidewalks are not going to necessarily increase the safety, because children will be thinking about, do I have to cross the street to walk on the sidewalk now? And it'll increase the number of people walking across the street, I feel. And people who bike and skateboard and all the rest are still going to do it in the street anyway. So I want to echo those comments as well. So we've submitted written testimony. I do feel like paving Gainsborough and adding light, adding other features like mirrors, perhaps at the curbs, at the corners, speed bumps, perhaps, but certainly better lighting and better surface paving would do a lot to improve the overall safety of the street. Thanks very much.
Thank you, sir. Next, we will hear from Mark Zwieben.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Mark Zwieben, and my last name is spelled Z-W-E-B like boy, E-N like November. And I live at 7625 Fontaine Street. I've been a resident here for 25 years. I'm not here to speak in opposition to sidewalks. I believe that they should be installed here and they're much needed. However, what I do want to do is ask the Department of Transportation to pull back, to slow the process down, and to make some changes in its sidewalk proposal. And I think we should reconvene this hearing after those changes are made. And there are 3 things that I think need to be done. The first is that there should be a full consideration of a product called FlexiPave. It's a flexible and highly porous paving material that has been used in this area in the District of Columbia for 11 years. The contractor in the area who installs it has installed over 500,000 square feet. It prevents runoff, but it also allows sidewalks to be installed right up to trees so that we can have sidewalks and pedestrian safety without having to sacrifice the 6 majestic trees and ornamental trees that are established here and add great beauty and health to our environment. The second thing, so I think that needs to be seriously considered, and it has not been as of yet. The second thing is that the Department of Transportation needs to fix its procurement system to allow it to purchase the FlexiPave product. I've been told by members of the DOT staff that it's illegal for them to buy FlexiPave as things are currently set up. And in fact, it's only been installed on two sidewalks in the county in this program. I visited the sidewalks and they're in beautiful condition. The DOT did a great job installing them, but that's it, only two. And that's because the invoicing for those two areas had to be done improperly. The contractor couldn't even say he was installing FlexiPave. That needs to be fixed and should be fixed before we go forward. And the third thing is, I think that DOT needs to do is to take the time and care to really understand and determine the true cost difference between installing this product and concrete sidewalks. It's really important that they do so because there will be not nearly the runoff that there is with concrete nor the loss of trees. And also, finally, I think as we sit here, we're not the only neighborhood where this is an issue. There are 9 other communities in Montgomery County where DOT is proposing to install sidewalks and to really, I believe, wantonly destroy trees, and that is not necessary. In fact, there's another neighborhood where they're talking about a whole block of mature cherry blossom trees, which is devastating to that neighborhood and is, again, completely unnecessary. I think we should all be working together and without threats of lawsuits and without the kind of strife that we get with these kind of proposals to try to make a safe sidewalk system and pedestrian system here, coupled with a retention of the beautiful trees that we have. And so I appreciate your time with this and hope you will consider them. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we will hear from David Sussman. Okay, how about Benjamin Galper?
Thank you. Ben Galper, Galper. I live at 11833 Gainsborough Road. Lived in the area a little more than 6 years. And we have 3 small children, and we care a lot about pedestrian and their safety, but I am opposed to the sidewalk program for a number of reasons. You know, a lot of people have talked about how the sidewalks will make our streets safer. But when they say that, they reference cars that are driving fast, whizzing around curves. And in reality, $1.5 million is a lot of taxpayer money. Can be much better spent on speed bumps, better lighting, mirrors, other people said, that I think would make our streets safer than sidewalks. So that's the first point. A lot of people have talked about the effect this will have on the aesthetics of our community. We're talking about cutting down many, dozens of old, large trees. And if we're replacing them with little trees, which will dramatically change our landscape, we're talking about adding 8 feet or 5 feet of pavement on one side of each street, which will also change the way the community looks. And I think, as other people said, when we bought in this community, we liked the almost a little more country feel of the street, which wasn't full of concrete. I also have serious concerns, as people said, with the drainage system. As a number have said, this will affect drainage in the area. And without going too long, I also think it's important for the county to make sure they're listening to the actual people being affected by the project. We all live on one giant cul-de-sac. I know Mary Cassette and Ivanmont may be separated, but we all are generally a cul-de-sac. There's no way in or out of this community otherwise go to 7 Locks Road. There's no businesses here. Everyone who's walking here and pretty much driving here lives in this area. So I caution the county to be being swayed or by outside organizations, and they should really listen to the members in the community that are being affected. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Let's see. Next, we will hear from Howard Weiner. Or Maxie Weiner. Okay. Minka Goldstein.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So when we got this proposal, the first thing I remembered was that it seems to me about 20 years ago, we got a very similar letter and nothing came of it. And eventually we got a letter stating that I don't know, somehow they had determined what the amount of pedestrians was and decided not to do sidewalks. I believe at that time, the sidewalks were not going to be 5 feet. They were going to be 4 feet or maybe even 36 inches. I don't remember. And one of my questions is why 5 feet wide? I can tell you that when I walk along Gainsborough Road up towards Churchill from Seven Locks, there's no way that sidewalk is 5 feet. There's no way the sidewalk on oh boy, I'm sorry, I'm blocking. Hold on. There's no way that the sidewalks all around the county are all 5 feet. Okay, so that was number one. Number two, there are preschools that walk down Goya and go into the woods, and they are walking in the street. I have to say that makes me very nervous. Whenever I see them, I slow down to almost nothing. And if the kids are really out in the middle, I stop. But this must be considered. You were having the sidewalk on Goya stop at Fontaine. No way. If it's going to be put it in all the way to the woods. That's number two. Number three, I am not averse to sidewalks on Fontaine and Goya and Gainsborough, but I agree with all who have said that the pedestrian traffic on Ivy Mount and Mary Cassatt is so little, okay? And if they don't want it, then don't put it there. I am also very concerned by the presentation that was given by the county initially at the very beginning of this meeting. The photos were not in sync properly. They weren't of the right places. There was one photo where there was a tree in grass and then the sidewalk was behind it so that it was more than 3 feet. And yet, you know, what we were told is it's all going to be 3 feet. In addition, one of the photos, which gave an actual number, proposal number this or whatever, it said that the subdivision was Hollowell, not Willerburn. And I'm saying to myself, if they are so inaccurate that at this presentation they can't even be accurate, what's going to happen when they start building sidewalks? Oh my gosh, the accuracy is
That
really.
is time, Minka. I'm so sorry. Can you please wrap it up?
Yes, in general, I'm not happy with the liability, but I do think something needs to be done, and I want speed bumps considered as well.
Sorry about that. All right, next we'll hear from Neil Moyer.
Hello, I'm Neil Moyer. I'm at 7723 Ivy Mount Terrace. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I want to testify in opposition to this plan for all the reasons that have been given. While I recognize that safety may be, certainly is always a concern, I also recognize that past absence of accidents is no guarantee of future results, just like the stockbrokers would tell you. But I oppose this because I believe it's a misallocation of resources, a serious one, because the safety problem that we have here on Ivy Mount Terrace is at the top of the hill, trying to make a left turn onto the southbound Seven Locks Road, where the county put a island in a terrible place that has caused 8 accidents already of vehicles. So that's a documented safety hazard, an existing safety hazard, and one that has been reviewed by a consultant to the Maryland Department of Transportation and found to be an engineering malpractice where that was placed. And I'm sure my colleagues from Ivy Mount Terrace will agree with me. That is a present danger.
Okay, sir, can you refocus your comments to the project at hand?
I just want to focus my comments on the fact that the county needs to look at the big picture and prioritize safety improvements based on actual data and actual situations. And this is a situation that absolutely has to be remedied first before any talk of sidewalks. I also think that there's a lot of problems with the sidewalks, and my neighbors have spoken very well and eloquently about it, including the idea of separating off Ivy Mountain and Mary Cassatt, which I certainly would agree with. That's it. Don't want to take any more of your time.
Mr. Moyer, could you please spell your last name for the record?
Moyer.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll hear from David Fuller.
Yes, hi, thank you, Lori. This is David Fuller, F-U-L-L-E-R. I apologize for being late. I'm on the other coast right now and couldn't get online. I did hear a few of the testimonies so far. In general, I'll keep my comments very brief. Where I reside on Greenleaf, I've spoken to almost every neighbor on our side of the street, as long as some of the other streets, and there's a general consensus. Even if we all don't agree whether there should be some sort of sidewalk, that there is consensus that the plan as proposed is far from ideal. For the various reasons that are to be presented, and I really would hope that the county steps back, takes a more holistic view of how to use our tax dollars, including lighting, potentially including speed bumps, but not to rush through a proposal that is universally not liked, even by the people who say, yes, sidewalks are a good idea on all these streets. I know the people in Mary Cassatt and Ivy Mountain have expressed they want to separate out from the rest. There are some dark corners on every one of these streets that we could talk about, but on the whole, I think it's a misallocation of our tax dollars. Greenleaf is just also one of those streets that it's not really a through street. It basically just connects Fontaine and Goya, without with minimal pedestrian traffic except for dog walkers, of which I am one, and I have never seen an issue on our street for the 10 or 12 cars that come every day. So again, I just would like the county to really step back, take a more holistic view of if there's an allocation of dollars for this for our subdivision, I'd like it to be looked at more closely as to what's the best use of that, including lighting, which I think should be number one. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll hear from Eric Skolnick. Okay, how about Dana Ginsburg?
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. My name is Dana Ginsburg, and I live at 7816 Ivy Mount Terrace. I'm testifying today in opposition to the proposed sidewalks on Ivy Mount Terrace and Mary Cassatt specifically. I would like to request that Ivy Mount Terrace and Mary Cassatt be removed from the sidewalk proposal. The overwhelming majority of residents on these two streets do not want the sidewalks. A detailed petition was submitted to the county on December 14th, 2022, with 60 signatures against the sidewalks. Please keep in mind there are only 69 occupied houses on these two streets combined. I have three simple points. The first is that Ivy Mountain and Mary Cassatt are not connected to the other part of Willerburn Acres, so it's very easy to remove these from the proposal. Our streets are not through streets and they have very little street traffic, as many of the residents have noted. In addition, no one on these two streets asked for the sidewalks. It's important to note that the initial sidewalk request dated December 10th, 2021, that started kind of the ball rolling on all of this, did not have signatures on it. This was verified via a Freedom of Information Act request that was received in December of 2022. And the third point is I believe the county should redirect its resources and prioritize sidewalks in more heavily trafficked streets. These sidewalks are simply not necessary on Mary Cassatt and Ivy Mount Terrace. Thank you again, and your consideration of this matter is very much appreciated by the residents of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Next, we'll hear from Brooke Greenwald.
Hi, my name is
Hi.
Brooke. My name is Brooke Greenwald, and I live at 7812 Ivy Mount Terrace. I am testifying in vehement opposition of the sidewalk project for Ivy Mount Terrace and Mary Cassatt, and very strongly feel that we should be removed from the program. We are not connected streets. We are not a throughway. We have major drainage issues on this street. I know of at least 9 people on our street that have had multiple floods this year alone because of drainage and water runoff issues. I have personally spoken in the last 3 weeks with an arborist, an environmental scientist, and I have spoken with an oncologist about what the impact of removing these trees and replacing them with young saplings will do to our environment, to our risk of cancer, and to our drainage issues. So I've basically looked at all 3 sides of the coin, okay? I want to mention that CDC just issued a report not long ago that said anybody who is walking down the street between the hours of 10 and 4 p.m., which are the highest UV rates of the day, and are not under trees, are exposing themselves to the equivalent of having no SPF sunblock at all. These trees absorb 70 to 90% of all harmful rays that cause cancer. And as we all know, Maryland is a very high cancer rate, especially for skin cancer in the nation. An oncologist told me from Sibley this past week, trees provide significant coverage for overhead UV rays, which are primarily skin cancer targets for all of us, especially children who are outside. I also spoke with an environmental scientist who told me removing the trees and adding the sidewalks will heat our ground, increase the speed at which the earth is heating up, and impact climate change negatively, and that it will take an average of 50 to 75 years just to get back to where we are today. Another point I want to make is that we are not through streets, as I said, and we have a very dark street on top of that. I have personally called the county 9 times in 5 years about getting lights fixed, getting bulbs changed, or other things done on this street. If you want to talk about safety and you want to talk about keeping our people safe, let's get the lighting problem fixed and other things as well. And the last and final thing I want to make as a point is that this is a situation where you have a subdivision, and I grew up here. I'm in my 50s. I moved here after growing up here by choice. You have a subdivision and parts of a subdivision that are really separate and very unique and a very active community. But the reality of the situation is this community didn't ask for it, especially on Ivy Mount and on Mary
Brooke,
Cassatt.
that's time. Can you please wrap it up?
Yes. And I just want to say my name was fraudulently used in the ACERT thing. So we don't even know how much of what ACERT sent was true, and I can prove it. So again, I'm not trying to be difficult, but I think we have to consider all the facts. And if we're talking about public safety, we have to protect ourselves from cancer, because anyone who knows what it's like to take care of someone with it understands what risk we're putting our children, our grandchildren, and ourselves at by putting these sidewalks in. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. Next, we'll hear from Anthony Haramis. Okay, how about Mira Silberg?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm sitting here with my husband, Eric, and we live at 7728 Ivy Mount Terrace. We are at the lowest point, or about lowest point of the street. We get a lot of drainage issues, but I just basically don't want to repeat everything. Everyone's been saying in opposition. We are completely opposed to the sidewalks. We feel like it would be detriment to our property, flooding issues, And, obviously with the trees, did you want to add anything? Basically, we're in agreement with everything Dana, Brooke, and other people have been saying. We also feel that we're separate from Ivy Mount, and Mary Cassatt are separate from other parts of the neighborhood, but don't feel that it's necessary on our street. It's not a through street by any means. That's it.
Mrs.
Okay,
Silver,
thank
could
you.
spell your last name for the record for me, please?
SIL, like boy, ERG. One more thing I wanted to add is that according to the current plan, the sidewalk doesn't connect or wrap around on Ivy Mount. And, it just seems kind of pointless to dead end at some point halfway up the street. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we'll hear from Christine Kozak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is, as you said, is Christine Kozak. I live on 11837 Gainsborough. And I don't have anything novel to add, so I'll just repeat what some of my neighbors have said, and that is I am opposed to this plan for two main reasons. First of all, I'm concerned about the destruction of 82 trees, which is a huge number of mature trees that are on only 6 streets. This would negatively impact the character of the neighborhood. And in addition to the aesthetic value of these trees, as others have pointed out, they provide a habitat for wildlife, and they also help buffer the noise which we get from 270, which is adjacent to our neighborhood, and improve the air quality. The second point is that Willerburn is also a self-contained neighborhood of widely spaced houses that is accessible only from 7 locks. So our streets don't lead anywhere other than to this neighborhood. And just because landscape conditions are favorable, as was pointed out in some of the literature that we got, if the conditions are favorable for sidewalk installation, that's really not a justification to go ahead and do it. Vehicular and foot traffic is very light in this neighborhood, and the proposed action is really not in response to accidents, nor have a majority of residents requested this. I also never got any sort of questionnaire from ASSERT to respond to. I do recognize that there are a few places in the neighborhood where there are legitimate safety concerns. And particularly there is a 90-degree curve on Gainsborough, which is very, very poorly lit, and that could be improved. And also the initial presentation pointed out that we could walk to some of the shops over by Harris Teeter, but the fact is there's no sidewalk on 7 locks from Goya to Montrose, and so that walk is extremely difficult. I would say it would be better to target those problem areas instead of implementing a destructive neighborhood-wide plan that many or most residents don't want and don't think we need. So really, that's all I have to say. I'm opposed to the plan, and I hope you reconsider this. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Next, we'll hear from Jules Polanetsky.
Hi, thanks very much. I want to join my many neighbors who on Mary Cassatt and Ivy Mount have spoken up in opposition to the project. I hope that in addition to the sort of the data and statistics that the county pulled together, you'll hear the sort of firsthand lived experience of the folks who live on the block and are able to represent their comfort with the ability to walk as it is currently, as well as their appreciation for the trees, the tree cover. Walking down Mary Cassatt is a beautiful experience. There are trees on both sides. We have a substantial oak. I was a city commissioner and a state legislator in New York, and I always learned that when you actually listen to the people who are directly affected. They often have the wisdom that the civil servants who are bringing obviously their expertise, but hearing that I hope will be persuasive. My kids grew up, learned to ride bikes, ran and walked down these streets. I do walk regularly. The risk is rarely walking up the fairly low traffic Mary Cassatt or Ivy Mount. When I walk on Saturday, there are few cars in the neighborhood. As you heard, many of the heaviest walkers over the weekend are also not driving as they walk to those synagogues. A firsthand report, I often do walk to Cabin John. I rarely can walk and do any shopping at Harris Teeter. It's certainly from the Mary Cassatt and Ivy Mount side, it's just a much further distance than would be a normal pedestrian excursion. I hope you will exclude Mary Cassatt and Ivy Mount. The risk and the challenge in this area is 7 Locks Road. You've heard about some of the challenges there, and urge that those of us who do appreciate walking, whether it's expanding the sidewalk to allow the community that wants to reach the Scotland Church to do so or elsewhere, those are the risks we have, not the small extensions to a street that is not a cross street, not a walk-through street. So I think you've heard a very substantial number of people overwhelmingly opposed in general on this call, but I think you certainly have heard in particular those of us who flagged the particular issues at Mary Cassatt and Ivy Mount. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we'll hear from Amy Now.
Hi, my name is Ken Lin. I'm actually Amy's husband, and we are opposing this project. We live on 11743 Gainsborough Road. The reason we're opposing is because the street is actually pretty narrow already, barely allowing two-way traffic to go through. A lot of the time, the residents are actually parking on the grassy area to avoid blocking the street. Having the sidewalk in place will force the resident to actually park on the street and making this two-way becoming one-way, which will be an issue with larger vehicle going through. And also, you know, people will be driving over other people's property just to get by. And we already have residents are putting stone on the grassy areas to prevent people from parking in their property. So, you know, definitely it's not beneficial for the traffic. The runoff, it's another issue that we're having. The rain, when it's heavy, it runs off and floods our garage. We already added additional drainage system, but with the sidewalk, we'll just make it even more difficult. We're definitely opposed to this project, and thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lin, could you please spell your name for me?
Yeah, my last name is Lin, L-I-N.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll hear from Naomi Aiken.
Hi, thank you. My name is Naomi Aiken, and I live at 12103 Greenleaf Avenue. The proposed sidewalk would be directly in front of my house. I've lived in this neighborhood since 2015 with my husband and children, first in a townhome and now in a single family home, actually both on Greenleaf Avenue. I have 2 children, ages 6 and 8, who attend Beverly Farms Elementary. And when they get older, they will attend Hoover Middle and Churchill High. They will walk from our home to and from the bus stop, if not to and from the actual schools themselves. Their safety is incredibly important to me. I'm here today in support of the sidewalk proposal. This is an active neighborhood full of families with young children who walk frequently. As a parent of young children, I am constantly concerned about their safety when playing outside in front of our house or walking to another friend's house in the neighborhood. And this is due to a lack of a sidewalk. A sidewalk would be a wonderful improvement to the safety of this neighborhood, particularly on Greenleaf Avenue and Goya Drive. All parents of young children work hard to teach their kids to look and to listen for cars. In this neighborhood, it's wonderful to see the growing number of electric vehicles. However, fully electric vehicles make no noise, meaning children or any pedestrian cannot hear them coming. Additionally, as we all know, we are living in a world of drivers who are distracted by their phones. No amount of additional street lighting or more signs can save a pedestrian from a distracted driver in a car that the pedestrian cannot hear coming. The best way to prevent these tragedies is for drivers and pedestrians to not share the same space. I'm fully aware of the environmental impact of the proposed sidewalk installation. However, according to the US Department of Transportation, and I cited the particular study in the written testimony I sent in, the average concrete sidewalk lasts 80 years. If in 80 years, the sidewalk in this neighborhood prevents just one child's injury, prevents just one child's broken leg, or prevents just one child's death, how can that not be worth it? Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. Okay, next we'll hear from Menachem Katz. I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. Okay, how about Deborah Panich?
Yes, thank you. My name is Deborah Panich, Panitch. I live at 7604 Galakins Drive, which is a cul-de-sac at the end of Mary Cassatt. I support my fellow neighbors from Mary Cassatt and Ivy Mount who have expressed that our neighborhood, our two streets are unique and separate from the rest of Willerburn Acres in that we don't really have through traffic. There's only 67 residents on both those streets and the cul-de-sacs, and majority of us do not want it. So I just agree with all of the points that my fellow neighbors have said. I do want to add that in the presentation that was given at the beginning of this meeting, there were some pictures of supposedly our neighborhood streets and what the impact and what the look of the sidewalks would be. And I just want to point out that I believe it was display F and G, which were the pictures from Mary Cassatt and Ivy Mount, were definitely not from our street, because both of those pictures had concrete kind of swales on the side or curbs, which we do not have in our neighborhood. I know that they do have those on Greenleaf and on Fontaine, but not on Mary Cassatt, not on Ivy Mount. And that is my biggest concern about sidewalks. I'm normally very much in favor of sidewalks. I think they are important in some other areas in Willerburn Acres, but particularly in Mary Cassatt and Ivy Mount, we have a water issue. Our streets, two streets, are basically straight downhill coming down from Seven Locks Road, which is different from the rest of Willerburn Acres, which is all much more level. And we have swales on the side that I think that some of the where they want to put the sidewalks are going to interfere with the swales. And we already have a lot of water issues. I live at the very bottom of Mary Cassatt, and when it rains heavily, my entire front lawn and the front of our whole cul-de-sac is just filled with water. If we have more water running down because we don't have the trees and we don't have as much grass slowing it down, it's going to create even more of a problem. And I'm very concerned with that. So that's why I'm opposed specifically to sidewalks on Mary Cassatt and Ivy Mount. And I would also just like to point out that I'm very intrigued and concerned about the idea of bringing all these trees down in the rest of the neighborhood. And I'm very much in favor of MCDOT slowing down the process and looking at flexible sidewalk paving materials and other options to make sure that not only are we providing safe sidewalks, which I do believe are necessary in some neighborhoods, just not specifically on our street, where we don't have as much traffic and people walking. But where it is, if they are going to put them in Willerburn Acres and other areas like on Fontaine or Gainsborough, that they take the time to look at FlexiPave or any other thing that can kind of help foster and protect the roadside trees instead of just taking them down. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deborah. And just just so that everybody is aware, the pictures on the displays are not meant to be from your neighborhood. They're actually pictures of completed sidewalks from throughout the county. So
when they made the presentation, they stated that it was specifically, this is a house on Mary Cassatt, this is a house.
No, it didn't say that. It said that it was discussing the right of way on those streets, but the picture itself is not related to, it's not taken from your neighborhood. Regardless, though, let's move on and hear from Gil Eckenkrantz.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So my name is Gil Eckenkrantz. I live at 7800 Mary Cassatt Drive. And I also want to express my strong opposition to the sidewalk plan with reference to Ivy Mount and Mary Cassatt Drive. And actually, what I found very interesting in listening in here is that I believe that so far every speaker, every homeowner from Mary Cassatt Drive and on Ivy Mount has opposed the sidewalk plan. It's unanimous so far. I don't want to echo the other speakers. I'm going to provide more detailed written testimony. But I just suggest that the plan is enormously intrusive in so many ways, many of which have been detailed by other speakers. And nobody's even pointed out that during the period of construction, it's just going to be a complete mess. But in any case, it's physically intrusive. It's much uglier than what we have currently. And with regard to safety issues, if the county's interested in safety, that's probably a good thing. But I would suggest, as others have, improved lighting would be one way to go. And then another way is to look what is on Post Oak, which is right off of 7 Locks Road. There's a sign, I believe it's black lettering on yellow, which was put up saying blind pedestrian. So warning drivers to be especially careful. I would have no objection if the county, in the interests of safety, wanted to post a sign, they could do it right on my property, saying children at play, slow down, or something to that effect. And they could put one in each direction on Mary Cassatt Drive and perhaps Ivy Mount. So there are so many less intrusive ways to improve safety. To me, and to the other speakers who've spoken so far and have submitted testimony from Mary Cassatt and Ivy Mount, this is just not going to work for us. It's just really awful. I'll be submitting more detailed testimony in writing. And I just, again, it's something that I hope gets reconsidered. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, next we will hear from Stephen Basheen.
Thank you, but I already spoke.
Oh, that's.
If you want me to
sorry.
speak again, I'm glad to, but.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry. Okay, how about Susan Milestone?
Oh, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Susan Milestone, and our family has lived at 7708 Mary Cassatt Drive for over 50 years. We're the original owners. I grew up in this neighborhood, me and my sister. This neighborhood has always been very safe and quiet. There's not much traffic at all. There's never been a lot of traffic. And there's never been any issues at all. And I've been here for over 50 years. It's just a very quiet street. Mary Cassatt is not a through street. I really want to request that Mary Cassatt Drive and Ivy Mount are removed from the Willerburn Acres sidewalk project. And we're not connected to Willerburn Acres at all. And just Mary Cassatt is just such a beautiful neighborhood with many trees, and taking down the trees and putting in cement sidewalks will take away from the natural beauty of the neighborhood and create an unbalanced look on the street. And it's just nobody here wants it. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Next, we'll hear from Ben Aiken.
Yes, thank you. My name is Ben Aiken. I live at 12103 Greenleaf Avenue. I want to start by saying I love living in this neighborhood, and that's in large part because of the people. My wife and I know many of our neighbors and consider them our friends, and our young children are friends with their children. I've been disappointed to hear, however, that some of these neighbors are opposed to what is, in my view, a common sense safety improvement by our county government that should be met with praise and appreciation. Indeed, my own objection to this project is that it is not extensive enough. I wish the plan called for sidewalks on both sides of the street, and that more sidewalks existed all along Seven Locks and Tuckerman, and in the Regency Estates neighborhood across from Seven Locks. I hope the department will consider these additions in the near future. I have many thoughts on the merits of the sidewalk project. I think it is obvious and straightforward that the sidewalk will modestly improve property values, and especially with the plan to mitigate and remedy tree removal, will be environmentally beneficial. I also have concerns about the very existence of this hearing. In my view, these hearings, like Yelp reviews, disproportionately attract detractors, as satisfied homeowners have less motivation to turn up. This well-known asymmetry inevitably impedes progress and development. Given the limited time I have here, however, I will expand upon those views in a written submission. Instead, I'll focus for now on safety. America is plagued by traffic violence. 2021 saw a 40-year high in pedestrian fatalities, with more than 7,000 dead and another 100,000 injured. Passenger vehicles are heavier and taller today than ever before and are filled with distracted drivers. This has created a lethal situation for pedestrians. That problem is especially acute in our neighborhood. I must take issue here with what I've heard from a few others. Our streets are not safe. Pedestrian activity is very common in our neighborhood. We are filled with families and dog walkers, and many Jewish members of our community do not drive on the Sabbath, and consequently, our streets are packed with pedestrians once a week. I myself use these streets constantly. My family goes for walks. I go running on these streets. When the weather is nice, I sometimes walk to Park Potomac and the Lifetime Gym. This activity comes with risks. I'm constantly on the lookout for vehicles and have to stay vigilant to avoid a collision. Lighting and speed bumps would help, but there is no substitute for separating pedestrians from cars. Now, I recognize that any public works project should be subject to cost-benefit analysis, but as we heard from Rochelle, the risks are very real and the benefits incalculable. Nobody ever thinks that they are going to be the ones who hit someone, or that they themselves could be the victims of an accident. I've heard others note that there haven't been accidents on the streets, but that is classic survivor bias. When there's an accident, community action follows. I'd rather have that action before everyone realizes how necessary it was. The costs for this project, meanwhile, are trivial. Some trees will be removed and replaced. Some sidewalks will fill with snow. Taxes that we've already paid will be expended to make our neighborhood better. These costs pale in comparison to the benefit. To put it another way, I would conclude by asking a simple question. If one day you wake up to see an ambulance on the street and discover that a member of our community, God forbid a child, has been struck by a car, how will you look back on your reaction with this plan? Will you think you fought the right fight, that the trees were too important, that shoveling snow twice a year was asking too much, and that the risk of this accident was too small? Will you be comfortable saying that to the family whose lives have been forever altered? I would not be. I strongly support this plan, and I hope that it will proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, next we'll hear from Eric Skolnick.
Thank you. I apologize for coming late, so I may be a little redundant or may have missed some things, but I'm Eric Skolnick. I live at 11913 Whistler Court, and I'd like to speak out in favor of the plans. Briefly, as a physician who deals with trauma patients on a routine basis, seeing the result of people who've been struck by a car is something I hope no one ever has to see. And I think it's been said by several people, it is a walking neighborhood. of all ages and at all times of day, particularly dusk and dawn when visibility is particularly poor. One of the great things about our neighborhood is not just the young kids who go to school, but there's young kids who grow up and become young drivers. And as has been mentioned, often distracted drivers, often a little faster than ideally I'd love to see people go. And as was referenced already, some of the streets do narrow down at points, and narrow areas coupled with cars and pedestrians is never the best way to be. So at the same time, I completely agree with the concern about the old growth trees. It's not something to be taken lightly. And I truly believe that there's got to be a middle ground with flexible pavement or other options so that we can have the safety and really have minimal impact to our tree coverage, because I also agree that's a pretty critical part of our neighborhood, both in terms of its quality and its safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Next, we'll hear from Jonathan Harris.
I will defer to written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
Sorry, or is that Harris, Harris, for the record?
Yes.
Yeah, Harris. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Next, we'll hear from Robert. Okay. How about Allison Green?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, so I want to make a few points. Saving a life is more important than saving a few trees. If by building a sidewalk in 100 years, we just save one life, it's going to be most important thing that we've done in our life. But that's one thing. I have a few suggestions. I'm proposing pavers to be built instead of concrete, and it's much more good looking and
What is your name? Street do you live
my
on?
name is Robert Gamze, Gamzeh. So pavers is very nice, and they're building pavers all across Washington, D.C., Arlington, Alexandria, and they look really, really beautiful. And to save some trees, you can build circles with pavers around those trees or go around the trees. And I suggest to build 40 inches sidewalk rather than 5 feet, and then do it on both sides of the street. And then also for the drainage, we can create when they're building the sidewalk, they could create a drainage system that will go down the street and go all the way down. And the other thing I would recommend would be to install more lights and then repave the street. It's really, really, there are a lot of potholes, and it's really important to do that. And I also just build installing more trees also to replace the old trees.
Drainage, fix the drainage system, put in lights.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Robert.
Thanks.
Next, we'll hear from Gene Gurvich.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gene Gurevich, Gurevich, and my family and I live at 11920 Gainsborough Road. I want to express support for building sidewalks in our neighborhood. My wife and I have 4 kids, ages 9, 7, 5, and 3. We constantly have to worry about our kids walking on the road in our neighborhood, chasing the little ones to get out of the way of the moving vehicles and waving down the vehicles to slow down. It happens regularly. There are numerous blind curves, and we regularly see people drive way too fast, putting pedestrians, particularly kids, in danger. I strongly believe that sidewalks will make our community safer and more walkable. Although I sympathize with the arguments made by some of the folks against the sidewalks, particularly those who will be directly impacted, I strongly believe that the safety benefits associated with having sidewalks in a more walking friendly and kid friendly environment really outweigh their concerns. Also, I heard a lot of people talk about how we haven't had any pedestrian collisions in our neighborhood. That's actually not true. I don't know of every incident, but I can say with 100% certainty that my neighbor was in fact hit by a car 2 years ago on the one of the streets that are being discussed today. And he had a very serious leg injury. So to say that we've never had incidents is not correct. Lastly, although the sidewalk is intended to be on the opposite side of my house, I would be glad to have it go through my property and see it as a relatively small price to pay for enhanced safety for our community. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Gene. Okay, next we'll hear from Nick Remy.
Hi, my name is Nick Remy and I live at 7700 Ivy Mount Terrace. I'll be short and sweet as I'm not really providing anything extra, just kind of in support of the rest of the, or most of the people on the Ivy Mount and Mary Cassett Drive that I am opposed to the sidewalks, as there just really hasn't ever seemed to be a need for it. And, you know, for all the other reasons that people have mentioned, for one, the looks and the trees, and, you know, the necessity of it. So I'll just, you know, like I said, short and sweet, but just wanted to add my name in there. Thanks.
Thank you, Nick. Okay, Allison Green.
Yes, hi, my name is Allison Green. I live at 7820 Mary Cassatt Drive, and I am against the sidewalks for all the reasons that have been indicated by my neighbors. I do also believe that Mary Cassatt and Ivy Mount should be separated from the Willerburn Acres community sidewalk proposal. I do believe that if the county would spend the money on either adding more streetlights on our street, as well as perhaps widening our street or doing something to the street, it would be much better than carving up 8 feet on our side and one side of the road with concrete sidewalks. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you, Allison. Okay, Gary, that's all I have for now.
Great. Thank you very much. Let me get back to the script. Thank you for your testimony, seeing that everybody who wishes to speak has had an opportunity to do so. This concludes the oral testimony portion of the public hearing. We will now have a question and answer session for, I don't know how many people would like to participate in that. It is past 9 o'clock, just 9 o'clock. So if there were a couple questions and answers, I think we would be able to take a few questions. If you would like to be part of that, then please click the reactions icon and then raise hand to raise your hand, or press *9 on your telephone keypad if you wish to ask a question. You may also type a question in the chat box. If we run out of time before answering all questions in the chat box, questions will be answered by email in the days to come. So does anybody have any questions? They raise their hand or
Yes,
in the chat.
we have a few raised hands here. First, we'll hear from Deborah Padich.
Yes, my question is that based on all the testimony that we heard, it seems that there is a very strong opinion from Mary Cassatt and Ivy Mount families to remove themselves from kind of the overall project of Willerburn Acres because it's seen as separate. My question is that a possibility to do, you know, or maybe it's just more pointing it out that, like, it seems that in the greater Willerburn Acres area, there isn't as much opposition, or at least there isn't as much testimony this evening. Not even a quarter, I don't think, of the people who spoke today were from the greater Willerburn Acres. It seemed like majority were from Mary Cassatt, Ivy Mount. And I just wanted to draw attention to that and ask if, you know, or to make sure that that was noted.
So thank you for your question. And we are, leaving the testimony open until February 22nd. And as we said when we started the program, the oral testimony will be also read with the written testimony, and everything will be considered. I believe the people that certainly who have participated tonight have made a very good case for their position, and we will take that into consideration.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have a question from Sid and Eileen.
Hi, my name is Sid Schneider. I live at 11901 Reynolds Avenue on the corner of Goya Drive. Question is, if any of this money, can any of this money, if it's not used for, let's say, the Ivy Mountain and Mary Cassette paving sidewalks, is that money usable for any other safety programs like the people have mentioned, the lighting, the speed bumps, the paving? Is that money usable for those other projects?
So let me try to answer that question again. That's a good question based on some of the testimony tonight. There is a capital improvement program that was listed, which is the sidewalk program. And so the money that is identified in the material for tonight, that money is from that program. The county, as you may know, has other programs for streetlights, for traffic issues, and for paving issues. So that would be a question that would come up to the division chiefs and the director of where those other issues that have been raised tonight, how they could be addressed through other programs. But it would not be part of the sidewalk program, and the money that was not spent here in Willerburn would be used in another part of the county for the sidewalk program.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Next, we'll have a question from Mark Dweeben.
All right, thanks, Lori. This is a quick question. I think it would be for Bob Gonzalez. I noted that I think you stated that there were 67 trees, healthy trees, that right now are listed for removal. And my question is, I believe that that number might include trees that are on private property as opposed to being in the right of way. My understanding was that that if owners requested it, trees on private property would not be removed if the owners requested that they remain in place. Is that still the case?
If it's on, if the branches go over the public right of way, it would still need to be considered to be removed.
I see. That's the first time I've heard that because that would mean that trees all over the county should be removed, wouldn't it? Whether there are trees all over the county that go over the right of way that are not being pegged for removal. That doesn't make sense to me. I think what you said before was the question was whether the trunk at breast height was over halfway onto the right of way. So this sounds like a change to me.
So Mark, I can explain that. Remember the critical root zone that we discussed in our email exchange.
I do.
Another way of determining the critical root zone is to look at the canopy. The outermost branches of the canopy directly correlate to the circumference of the critical root zone. So if the branches are over the right of way, it would be up to the arborist, honestly, as to whether a tree like that would need to come out. Certainly, if we use a flexible type material, the trees where the trunk is right where the sidewalk would need to be, those would still need to be removed, unfortunately. But
I'm not sure I understand or agree with that, but I just have one other question was if flexible material is used where the trunks are on private property, which I think was the case, for instance, in the tree that I looked at today.
Mhm.
pardon me, yesterday on McKinley Street, and also the other tree on Kenhow. If that's the case, in both cases, the branches of those trees are well over the critical root zone area, and they've been retained. So
Well,
I'm
no,
not
the
trying.
flexi pave can go over the critical root zone. You can lay it over top of the
Right,
critical root.
Right. And then, so I have a related question, and then very quickly, and I appreciate the time, which is that, is there any momentum or thought to coming up with some kind of procurement vehicle that allows FlexiPave to be used so that it can be billed for directly instead of indirectly and improperly?
The FlexiPave is one of the options we could use. It is just not it's not a negotiated unit price on our work order contract, but we could still use it.
Understood. I mean, I think you can use it by change order, and that's what the change order clauses are for. And that way you can get it on a cost plus basis and not worry about getting gouged on the pricing. Just a thought. I'm trying to work with you guys here. I think it's possible to do it. So, and I'd be happy to talk to you more about that later. We do need to have sidewalks here. I just want to make sure we're not unnecessarily killing trees to do it.
I might say though, just to add to the discussion, if you want to talk to either Mr. Gonzalez or one of the field people, or perhaps the arborist, hopefully something could be worked out where they could meet you in the field if you had a particular question with a particular set of trees.
That's great. And one last thing was, would it be possible to involve a third-party arborist, which was done, I think, at least on one of those locations before, so that we can get an independent, not yours, not mine, an independent voice in this?
Well, you're welcome to obtain their services directly.
Okay.
If you feel a third party will help you in discussions with the county, but it would not be something that the county would necessarily pay for.
Understood. I just understand. My understanding was that was done. All right, listen, thank you so much for your time. I don't want to make this. I appreciate it.
Okay. Is that all of the hands?
No. Next, we'll hear from Karen Meister.
Thank you. I just was wondering if you can clarify whether Ivy Mount and Mary Cassatt can be severed from this plan.
The answer is yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
I mean, we have done, I've been involved in other projects as the hearing officer, and there have been situations where the proposal has been modified based on the testimony.
I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Okay, next we have a question from Christine Kozak.
Yes, I would like to ask about liability. If someone trips on an irregular sidewalk or on ice that maybe forms a day or so after a snowstorm, who's liable? Who can get sued for those injuries?
I think that's a legal question, and I'm not sure anybody from the county can answer that directly.
Has the county been sued for people who've tripped on sidewalks?
I'm not aware. I'm not in that position to know. If you feel that that's an important question, please send that to Lori Main at her email, and we will see if we can get an answer for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So actually, Gary, I know the answer to that question. Not that I know the answer, but you can contact your insurance adjuster, because it would be a claim. I used to work as a legal secretary, and from experience, I can tell you it would be a claim against your homeowner's insurance, and the adjuster would assign somebody to handle the claim for you. I mean, at least from the cases that I worked on, oftentimes the homeowner would be dropped. I mean, I've never seen a claim actually against a homeowner. Usually it's people don't really, there's no money in suing homeowners. And so typically when people slip and fall, they sue grocery stores or
Not
commercial
true, not
businesses.
fucking true.
Okay,
Oops.
please don't use that language.
Oh my God, I'm sorry, I thought I was off. Oh, I thought
I'm
you
just
guys were
saying
cutting
from
me
the
off.
cases that I worked on, I've never seen a case where anything actually, basically the adjuster will handle it for you. And if there is an actual suit, they will assign an attorney or however the insurance company that you use handles it.
So it's still going to affect the homeowner. The homeowner's insurance will be charged for that.
I mean, I would ask your adjuster. I don't know anything about that.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much. Lori, is there anybody else that would like to ask?
There are.
Okay,
Next, we'll hear from Trip Rothschild.
Hi, this is Marjorie Rothschild. And my question is, does the county have a process on a project proposal like this where it considers in a formal way the environmental impacts of the project if it were to come to pass, starting with construction and tree removal,
Climate change impacts.
climate change impacts?
well, that's what we're hoping to get from the testimony and from the experts within the department. And it's presented to, the recommendations are presented to the department head, Mr. Chris Conklin, who makes a decision and recommendation.
Is that,
But there's no formal environmental impacts.
is there,
There's no additional formal like environmental assessment or checklist that I'm aware of.
then that seems to leave out an important component of a basis for going ahead with a project like this.
Let me just add, this is Bob Gonzalez, sidewalk program. The sidewalk program is exempt from environmental studies because we do minor sidewalk projects. It's federally mandated that we are exempt. They're considered, sidewalk projects are considered minimal impacts to the environment. So a study is not required.
But we are, taking testimony and comments, and there have been some testimony tonight, which you're aware of, dealing with flooding issues and drainage issues, and those certainly would have to be looked at as a relationship to the proposed sidewalk program.
Well, and also destruction of trees. I mean, that has environmental impacts. To say that you're only going to look at impacts related to flooding seems to me.
No, I said that that's something that came out of the testimony.
I see.
And that would be an area that we would look further into, of whether there is something that some other people in the department should also look at to determine if that's a problem that needs to be corrected. Maybe not part of the sidewalk program, but part of a departmental program that we have available. Same thing with streetlights. That there've been issues and discussions of streetlights. There've been issues and discussions of speeding and need for traffic control to some extent. So those issues can be passed on to the divisions that are responsible, and we would take that information and coordinate to the extent that we would pass that information on. With respect to the trees, I mean, I think you may think it's insufficient, and that's your prerogative, but the issue of replacing the trees is the policy that the county has, and I believe it's the same policy for more major construction as well.
But, yeah,
road,
but
road construction or something like that. The tree
Okay.
replacements would be similar.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next we have a question from Jonathan.
Hello, I had a question. So my understanding is if a tree is listed as air excavation required, that means it's possible it may not, it may have to go. That it may be, on average, what would your expectation be of what fraction of those trees where air excavation is required are going to have to be removed? The second part of that is, suppose you decide not to remove a tree, and then a few years later the tree dies. What's the resolution? Does the county do anything about that, or is that left to the homeowner?
Well, that's a good question, and I'm not a specialist in the tree arborist questions. I will tell you though, if it is a tree in the public right of way and is a county responsibility, the county would be responsible to remove the tree if it died.
What does it mean in the right of way? The trunk in the ground in the right of way, or the roots extending into it, or?
Robert, can you answer that?
It's typically if the trunk is within the public right of way. That if there's a situation, well, all this, the decisions and strategy is going to be based on what our arborist recommends. So even if it's on public right of way and it looks like it may endanger the pedestrians, we will work with the homeowner so we can remove that. If it has branches starting to fall or it looks like it's decaying, we need to make it safe.
Okay, and on Goya Drive, what is the possibility of, instead of taking away green area and trees, narrowing the road and using a significant chunk of the road space? It's extra wide, at least on part of it. I don't recall if it extends all the way, but it looks like there's 8 feet of room. There's 8 feet that could be taken away from the street and still have enough for parking on both sides.
If that proposal goes forward, we would have to check with our traffic section that affects the operation of roads, people parking. So we would have to propose that to them to see if it's a potential consideration.
And what will be the process by which we could encourage that to happen?
You just did. You gave us some testimony. Is it written in your written testimony or your oral testimony?
Not yet, I guess.
I think you should, because that we have looked at that. I've looked at that or raised that in the previous in a previous case. And it was examined as a feasible way if the road could still operate safely and have meet the needs of the community.
Yeah, because I have one of the trees is a mature oak tree, which does provide a lot of acorns for the wildlife. I mean, even though the squirrels sometimes cause a bit of trouble and stuff, but a small tree would not replace that for a long time.
Yeah, I think you should put your thoughts down, and we would take a look at it.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have a question from Deborah Wilbur.
Thank you. So I live on Whistler Court, which is off of Gainsborough and not directly one of the streets that is on this project. but we would be directly affected by any construction. We can't leave our street. It's a small street. We can't leave our street without going on Gainsborough or Fontaine or Goya. And I'm wondering why the entire neighborhood wasn't notified about this. It seems only the people that are directly affected by the sidewalks. So I'm curious if you can speak to that and if that would be remedied going forward.
Lori, can you talk about the
Yeah.
outreach?
So basically, that's the standard. We send to the residents within the project area. We don't send to every resident on the street that are not proposed. You know, like Mr. Aaronrich said, you can put that in your testimony. We have changed the process based on testimony in the past, and we would be happy to consider that.
Yeah,
Okay.
but luckily you found out about the meeting and through other advertisements and promotions that may have been available. Thank you.
Okay, next we have a question from Peter Altman.
Thank you, Lori. I'm on Goya, and my property is one of the ones that's slated to have a sidewalk. I live next door to Jonathan. My question really is whether removing Ivy Mount and Cassatt from the project would free funds that could then be reallocated towards alternative solutions to putting down concrete. The flexi pave solution seems like the win-win to me.
If they're more expensive.
If it's more expensive.
That's a consideration. I think that I don't know how fungible the money is, but clearly, if there's a better solution, we would like to consider it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, we have a question from Brooke Greenwald.
Okay, first, I really want to thank everybody who's hosting the meeting and who's spoken at the meeting. Again, as a reminder, I'm Brooke Greenwald and I live at 7812 Ivy Mount. Couple of quick questions. First of which is, Gary, you mentioned that you could help pass on information and testimony from this evening to other appropriate departments. So I
Well,
actually,
right, other divisions within the department, right?
I'm sorry, divisions within the
In the
department.
department, right. I
I
mean,
don't
we
have,
could also pass them on to other departments, but generally these are
Okay.
transportation issues, right?
so my nomenclature may not be perfect, but my question is a little more specific, and that is that it is a specific request to ask you to do so with respect to the lighting. And one of the gentlemen mentioned the what was put at the top of Ivy Mount on 7 Locks. I myself have almost been hit 4 times in my car because of it. So I'd like to actually respectfully request that you pass the testimony that's appropriate on to the right people internally. We are also all, letting them know or connecting, but it never hurts to have extra help. That's, and if you could do that, we would really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm sure I speak for all my neighbors. And then the second thing is, having heard everything you've heard, realistically, do you feel that Ivy Mount and Mary Cassatt are a viable candidate to be removed from the sidewalk proposal and project at this time?
Yeah, it's a little premature because we haven't seen the written testimony. And there's still, a few weeks remaining before the testimony is closed. The record is closed. So I think it's a little premature, but I think that once the hearing is closed and we are able to assemble all of the testimony, we'll, to the extent that we have follow-ups of questions that have been raised or questions in the field we need to look at, we will hopefully in several months be able to have a position to present to our director.
So are you the decision maker, Gary, or someone on this call, or is someone else the decision maker and you are all just collecting information and testimony from us, just so my counterparts in the neighborhood can understand or better
Well, it's predominantly the latter, and that obviously the decision maker is the director of the department. I work directly for the director in the director's office. And the others that are here tonight are in the Department of Transportation Engineering, and their function is in fact just to do the sidewalk program, and they're experts and their expertise in that area. So I think we just we look at all of the information and weigh it and then present it to the director. So from our perspective, Chris Conklin, the director, is ultimately going to make a recommendation to move forward or not to the county executive and others. But it starts through working with the staff and reviewing the testimony and following up with the issues that have been raised.
But it is realistic to understand that this is not a pre-canned decision, that everything
No.
that's been written or said or spoken or testified to really actually counts and matters. Because I think one of the things that I'm seeing from members of the neighborhood that I'm getting texted about, even during this call, is I hope this isn't a pre-canned thing where we're doing kind of a dance that we have to do for the county so they can kind of cover their butt, but we really don't matter in this decision. And I really want to make you guys look great, and I want to help you as well as we want you to help us. So especially for Ivy Mountain and Mary Cassatt, I'm gonna, put the 800-pound gorilla out there and ask the direct question if this is honestly a foregone conclusion, or everything we're saying and doing and putting our time, effort, and energy into really does have an impact on, at the very least, Mary Cassatt and Ivy Mountain.
Well, I think if you look at the experience of the program, certainly in the last year, you'll see that there has been an impact on the decisions from the testimony, and we've been in places where there have been lots of research done by the community, which was very helpful. And I would recommend, to the extent that you feel that it's important to come out and look at any of the issues that you have in the field, that we could make sure that we have staff out there to hear your issues or hear your concerns.
And
So-
I would also add, Gary, that on Ivy Mount, there have been so many floods and problems lately with drainage every time it rains that we've actually been sending pictures of what's going on. Half our road has been dug up just in the last 3 weeks.
Okay, well then, I appreciate that. And yes, no, this is not preordained. I can tell you, I've not been told or instructed or even in a discussion with anybody other than looking at the same material that you've looked at and to hear your testimony.
Okay, thank you so much. And again, thank you so much for really hearing all of us, because I know this is a project for you, but it's our homes for us and our families and everything that's in our orbit.
No, we appreciate that, and we appreciate both sides of the discussion. I think that the community, it's nice to see the community come out and express their concerns, both for and against. And we will take it under consideration.
Okay, it is 9:33. We have 2 more questions. So
Okay, let's limit it to 2 more, and then we can close up for tonight. Thank you.
okay, great. We'll hear from Sid and Eileen Schneider.
Hi, thank you. Question about the sidewalk width. Number of people expressed their concerns about the width of the sidewalk and the environmental impact of that width in many ways, including trees and drainage and so forth. Is it within the realm of possibility that to help make this project go in some fashion, that width can be reduced to something less than 5 feet?
That's a question also probably for Bobby.
Yeah, that we're bound by the federal and state guidelines to build ADA compliant 5-foot wide sidewalks. If for some reason we cannot build 5-foot wide sidewalks, we have to submit a waiver. Has to be a good reason why we could not. So we're just bound to the ADA requirements and guidelines.
You're actually bound. It's not just preference.
Oh yeah, it's a requirement. It's like doing the speed limit. We would have to submit for a waiver if we can't.
Okay, because I thought I had seen something in the literature that was put out that indicated that that was your druthers because of the ADA guidance, but I didn't understand that that was a requirement.
Yeah, it's a requirement, and it we'd have to present a reasonable backup why we couldn't. Now, if we didn't have the right of way and it was like a small segment, we are allowed to tweak it down a little bit, but even the state has a minimum for it would, I don't know if it's called, it's just a narrow section. We're only allowed a little segment of it, but in general, we're bound to 5 foot.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
Okay, the last question then.
Okay, Minka Goldstein.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
What I want to know is basically, you've taken all this testimony. My neighbors have presented beautiful alternatives to just taking down all the trees and putting in and concrete and things like that. In other words, they've made lots of really good suggestions, good ideas, including pavers, including the permeable, stuff that Mark Zwiebin has done a lot of work on. And, what I want to know is who meets and makes the decision now? In other words, who, is there a board? Is there one person? Is there, how does this go forward? That's part one. And this part two is that I was told in my conversations on the phone with several of you that if I decide not to remove 2 gorgeous trees that are over 32 years old and are on my property, but the roots might go under the sidewalk that's put in, and that tree dies, that the county would do nothing unless I remove them now. I can't wait to see what happens and hope that they will survive. Is that correct? And if so, I was also told by the county they're going to do everything possible to figure out a way to keep them. Is that the truth?
I could agree to the very last thing you mentioned. We do not like cutting trees, and we are going to look at other constructible techniques to save the tree. We will be with our arborist to make sure that is a sound plan. So we will try, and we are going to have field meetings with the residents and the arborists and our field inspectors to look at these. I think you mentioned, are we going to consider the other options that the other residents mentioned? Yes. The only one thing that kind of stuck out was the pavers. I personally like pavers on my personal property, but they're not considered ADA compliant. They're not smooth for those on wheelchairs or crutches.
Right.
So we have to be ADA compliant. But yes, we appreciate the recommendations, and we'll try to implement them if they're possible.
So again, going back to the decision making, the team that's on the phone call with you is predominantly the team that's going to go through everything and try to do the additional research that we need to do, in some cases field work, and come up with a package that may be different than what's been proposed. And you know, I will be working with the team on that, and we'll present that to our director through the deputy directors, and hopefully there'll be a good basis for moving forward with the recommendations that we come up with.
Thank you. I just want to echo, by the way, all of our thanks and appreciation for you taking this time. We should have started this at noon. I'm sure we'd still be going, but
No,
thank you.
we appreciate it, and it's you know, it's glad. I'm very pleased that you have your as a community has some very good ideas. It's your community, you live in it, and I know I respect your thoughts and ideas, and
We've got a lot of smart people in our community.
yeah, as well elsewhere in Montgomery County as well. It's a good place to work. Well, okay, with that, I have just one more statement to make, and then I think we so now that all the questions have been answered, we will now conclude the hearing. As we said before, we'll keep the record open for 4 weeks. And that's our general standard, 4 weeks. But if it turns out that we need to be flexible, please let us know, and we'll consider if it needs to be extended for a good reason. Comments and written testimony would then be due on Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023 at 5 p.m. Additional written and comments may be submitted by email and must be received or postmarked by the close of the hearing record. And as we said before, submissions should be sent to Ms. Lori Main, and she did an excellent job tonight manning the Zoom. And she is at the Sidewalk Program, Division of Transportation Engineering, 100 Edison Park Drive, 4th floor, Gaithersburg, Maryland, 20878. And she can be reached. Her email is Lori, Lori, .main, MAIN, at Montgomery County MD, one word, .gov. And I think, yeah, it is. It's posted on the screen. Lori's contact information is on the screen. Thank you for joining us tonight. The public hearing is now concluded. Thank you very much. The time is like 9:42 p.m. Have a good evening.
Would the board like to order a copy of the transcript at this time, Mr. Enrich?
I'm sorry, pardon me?
Would the board like to order a copy of the transcript at this time? I'm from Planet Depot.
We won't be getting a paper copy, but we always get a digital copy on a 10-day turnaround.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
No, why is it not ending?